me give you a little bit of what's been happening. I live on my property now for about 15 years, 10 acres, and I have a pond out in the back. It's probably about less than half an acre, and I'm talking about the pond itself. I'm very meticulous, as you may know, that my grass is cut like crazy, that the property looks wonderful, that I don't want to call it a bed and breakfast, but I will tell you it is serenity. The pond started to overgrow after years and years. And I was looking at it. I would send my guys in. I would be part of it. We clean the hills. Last year, I had Derek suit up into one of those hip waders and get down there. And we were clipping all of the cattails, we'll call them bulrushes, right at the bottom of the water. So the water supposedly drowns it. This is what I was told. Now, this took days and days and days. We touched maybe 20% of the pond. A year later, it's growing more and more. So I meet this guy when I took my boat down to Coburg. He's got a company, WeedsBGone. He gives me his card. He says, I can clean your pond. And WeedsBGone, I'm thinking, you're a landscaper. How the hell do you clean a pond right? Because I'll tell you, I called up a company and he said $100,000 to bring in a big tractor to scoop it all out, clean the bottom, truckload after truckload would go out again. And $100,000. I said, are you kidding me? I knew that would ruin my property. So the guy that I met in Coburg, his son came to my house. His name is Nick, and we're going to be talking to him in just a second. I learned so much. This was just done on my property about a week ago. So from me to you, I want to educate you on what we need to know about a pond. Where's Nick? He's coming. I see him.
Coming. Can you?
Nick, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Mike?
I'm good, thank you. I'm going to have to put on my earphones so I can hear you.
Good.
Okay, now you came to my place, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the video first, so okay. This way they get a little bit about it, and we'll be right back to you.
Sounds good. Go ahead.
All right, here comes the video. Nick, I've been living here for 15 years now, and I love this property. 10 acres. It comes with this beautiful pond, or at one time it was beautiful. Why is this pond not the way it was before?
A lot of it is from runoff from the farms around. A lot of the leaves fall into the pond and turns into rotting materials at the bottom. So that builds up. The weeds just eventually will take over the pond if it's left unmaintained.
WeedsBGone. The first thing that came to my mind was WeedsBGone, you're a landscaper. But you're not a landscaper.
We're not landscapers, we're pondscapers.
Pondscapers.
Yeah, we turn swamps into swimming pools sometimes.
I can't wait to see this. Let's do it.
Okay.
Gotta be kidding me. I gotta get me one of those.
You can tell this pond hasn't been maintained in a long time.
I got 10 acres. I'm working on the house, the garage, the shop, all kinds of other things. I didn't know I had to maintain the pond. I do now. The bulrushes, what we need to do is cut them right at the bottom. What's great about this is we've got that little cutter that cuts them. What happens is the water goes back in and drowns them, and they can't regrow again. Because right now, this is looking like a mess.
Oh yeah, put your hat on for this one.
Nick has been going for about 10 minutes, and he's already cleared this area. And what a way to trim the pond. With me and my guys, it would take, I don't know, a week in probably full suits to get in that water. Talk about a mess, talk about frustration. What he's doing is literally going up the side of the pond, almost hedging the wild growth, bringing it back down in the pond, letting it float. Later on, he's gonna grab his cage, pull it out of the pond, and put it in the bin that we have placed here. Afterwards, cleaning the bottom, also putting that in another bin, then additives go in. That's gonna fill it with the better nutrients to keep it clean, to keep it looking really good. That sounds like a pretty quick process. For me, way too long. For him, he said a day or two. Pondscapers. That's amazing. Nick, you know, when you first showed up, I was worried about the machinery you were going to put on my property. And I got to say, when you came off the trailer on that machine and did not harm my property and then drove it down that hill like it was, like I wanted to get on that fucking Bronco, you did incredible. Now, I've got to ask you a couple of questions simply because there's a lot of people out there that said, are you okay to do this? Because are you not screwing up Mother Nature by cleaning up the pond?
Okay, so in some cases, it does disrupt the nature of the pond with the habitat and wildlife. Most cases, what happens is as the pond goes through different stages of its life, it actually starts to die off. So as the pond's dying, it overloads itself with nutrients, which is very overtaking for weeds. And once the runoff starts coming through some of these ponds, an overloading of nutrients and an overloading of weeds can actually become quite harmful to the ecosystem and the wildlife as well. So they call the process eutrophication. So as the pond dies, a lot of the wildlife is unable to live in there as it lacks oxygen, it lacks flow, and the bottom of muck is so rich in nutrients that nothing is actually able to live in there. And anaerobic bacteria will build up and feed the weeds with more phosphorus and nitrogen over the years. And if left unmaintained, it would actually not only look like the pictures we're looking at now, but much worse, sometimes having no water left and just muck left for nothing, really, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me talk about that for a sec so we can explain it in detail. I'm going to help you with this. One, I used to have fish in the pond. And then after a while, it was mainly because of the muskrats or the weasel type. They came in and ate the fish. Then the coyotes came in and ate those guys. It was a vicious cycle. When you talk about the nutrient infused, what you're meaning is because there's farms around me and they spray, they add all kinds of things to the field to grow their crops. As the rain comes down, because this pond is actually naturally fed from a water source where Mother Nature has carved that path when it rains, it's picking up those nutrients and bringing it to my pond, correct?
That's correct, Mike. Yeah, so it's called external loading. So the nutrients is loading the pond externally from runoff. A lot of you pick it up from the ground naturally, from the topsoil, but also from the farms is a big issue from overloading of nutrients in the lakes, ponds, and anywhere that holds water, essentially.
Which leads me to another path. One, this is a two-part. One, how has that affected my pond? Because in my mind, I'm thinking, well, if you're feeding nutrients into the pond, shouldn't it actually help it? And two, you brought me right to this. As the water continues to follow its path, it ends up going down to the lake. And I want to know, does it make lake water bad? So let's start with number one.
Number one, the reasoning of your pond is yes. So the farmlands from around, the water that's feeding the pond itself is picking up nutrients from the farms around your area, especially in your on the other side of the pond, you have a farm right there. When they fertilize and they'll spread a lot of manure, fertilizers itself, they're very rich in nitrogen and phosphorus. So as that comes into the pond, it's overloading the weeds with nutrients, so it's giving the weeds almost miracle grow to just take over. And over the years, the fertilizers have been getting much more nutrient rich. So you're getting more nitrogen and more phosphorus being dumped into the pond. So as it comes through there, it does filter it a little bit, but when it goes downstream, that water is so rich in nutrients, it is also affecting lakes much, much more than the average pond. The lakes are getting taken over by not only bulrushes, you're getting blue-green algae, which is toxic to the ecosystem. We're getting a lot of that from farmland runoff. So a lot of areas that have farms all around, we're trying to actually filter the water upstream before that water actually hits the lake.
So that means by me hiring you to come in and do my pond and giving it that maintenance or a yearly maintenance that you told me about is wise for the ecosystem?
That's correct. So for us to come in with the big harvester and give it that initial cleanup, it does have some sort of effect on the way the eco-life does work. But by having the treatments that we added, we're actually cleaning that water before it actually has opportunity to go downstream, which is hugely affecting the quality of the water as it leaves the pond as well. So we are using your pond, the ponds are being used as a filtration system. As it goes back downstream, it'll be much cleaner as it leaves the pond.
Okay, what did you put in my pond?
So I put in what's called beneficial bacteria and enzymes. So there's a liquid and pellet and puck formation that we use. So one of the liquids that we use, it's called Clean and Clear. It actually breaks the rotting materials down at the bottom of the pond, which has built up over the years. So you get a lot of that gunk, muck, rotting leaves that this liquid goes down and it breaks it up and it solidifies it, okay? And then we use these things, they're called muck digesters. The muck digesters are pellet and puck formation, and they physically consume that rotting material that's been building up for so many years, and it actually will turn it into carbon dioxide and water.
See,
and this is also very beneficial for the fish as well. So as these enzymes eat the muck, insects feed on these enzymes, and the fish will feed on the insects, and it's a natural life cycle. It's no different than what you do in your fish tank that's been around for many, many years. And also, it's no different than what you do in a septic tank to break down the solids. Everything that we use is very, very good and beneficial to the wildlife and the ecosystem.
So the first thought is that a lot of people, because we put a little bit on my website, and then there was questions right away. Mike, aren't you hurting the environment? The truth is by us maintaining these ponds, we are cleaning everything, like you said, filtering before it hits the lake. And if everyone were to do this, will the water look clean again after all this? Wait till I show you. If everyone were to do this, that means that we're now cleaning everything as we go before it gets to the lake, and we're actually helping the ecosystem, correct?
That's correct, Mike.
Wow. Okay. Now, I didn't know that, because I really did think Mother Nature had its way of doing everything. And after having the property for 15 years and then seeing, wow, my pond doesn't look good anymore. Because when I first moved in, it was beautiful. It had wildlife, the birds, the crickets, the frogs, and that seemed to fade away. So your recommendations is to do this like once a year for sure. You want to be on my property once a year. Is that correct?
Depending on the amount of growth that comes back, adding treatments to your pond every year is a for sure thing that I would be recommending for you to keep the upkeep on that. Doing the actual physical labor of coming in and harvesting. The only thing that's really that we'd be worrying about is the algae, the weed growth inside the pond. To have some weeds around the side of the pond is okay, but once they start to swallow the pond up, like we saw at your place there, they turn into rotting composition every year at the bottom, filling the bottom of the muck or the pond up with muck, essentially giving you less water and more opportunity for weed growth every single year. So depending on how much regrowth you get, that's when we make a judgment on if we bring a machine back in or we put more treatments in. So we would weigh out your options, but essentially a pond needs to be maintained 1 to 2 times a year to keep it a healthy running operation.
Now, I just got a question. Do I have problems with mosquitoes and moths and everything on my property? The truth is I don't. And stagnant water and cedar trees tend to attract mosquitoes. You would have them. I try to stay clean and on top of everything. So, of course, we got a couple of mosquitoes, but nothing crazy, because mosquitoes love me. They called their cousins and brothers and sisters and said, man, you got to taste this guy's blood. If there was too many mosquitoes on my property, I'd probably move. So I don't have a big problem with that. But staying on top of the water, I put in a windmill, which adds oxygen to the water, because I knew the idea was much like a fish tank. We want to oxygenate that water. And what you told me is even what I have is not enough. I need to add more air to the water to keep it clean, correct?
Yes, I totally agree with that. You know, the oxygen that you're bringing in with the windmill is very minimal. You're only getting oxygen when the wind's blowing. So what we do is it's called continuous laminar flow aeration. By having the continuous oxygen running 24/7 is getting rid of what's called anaerobic bacteria and allowing the natural beneficial enzymes to become a live organism again. And we use these treatments, which are engineered enzymes, that will actually jump this process and get you ahead of the game. So by putting the powders, pucks, and liquids in, they're engineered to become alive on highly oxygenated water. And there's another one I use, it's called a biostimulator, that actually is almost a steroid that we would put for the lacking initial microbes that are in the bottom that are fighting against the anaerobic bacteria, which builds up from a lack of oxygen. So anything that's rotting at the bottom of the pond is pulling oxygen from the bottom of the water column. So it's oxidizing at the bottom. So we're re-oxygenating the bottom of the pond. So it's called dissolved oxygen.
Okay. Somebody said, how deep is my pond? It's about 4 to 5 feet deep, depending on how much rain we get. It could even get close to 6 feet if it fills right up.
And some areas of that pond has gone down to 2 to 3 feet from muck building up from the weeds rotting in there year after year, the leaves falling in, not being maintained. So that muck level is coming up every year. It doesn't get maintained, eventually leaving you with no water.
Which is not good. Somebody asked just a moment ago, when is the best time to actually work on the pond like you did? Would that be the fall?
It would be more near the end of the season after all the wildlife has done their thing in the pond. So we don't do anything before spawning, bass spawn and fish spawn in the lakes. Anytime after July 15th, you're not allowed to work in the lakes. Birds nest a lot in the starting of the season. So we don't do any type of bulrush removal at these points in time. We do follow within the regulations of when you're allowed to cut, which is pretty much any time after June. July 1st gives you pretty much clearance to cut in the lakes. And birds, birds can still be nesting in those areas. So we do a little bit of research on what's around in that area as well.
Okay,
I
want everyone to know that we're going to be, Nick did a lot of aerial shots of before, during, and after. We're going to put that up on the website within hopefully the next couple of days because we're trying to get all that information. We do have an after picture I want to show everyone of the pond, which actually blew me away. Look at it now. We see the water's a little dirty, but after a little while, because of the chemicals you put in there and some more rain, this is going to clear up and look really, really good.
So one thing I want to say is, so what we're putting in is not a chemical. It's an engineered enzyme. So we don't use any type of chemicals to cure the water or help clean the water. It's actually, these treatments are live organisms that are not naturally, but they're physically cleaning that water and keeping it in an equal, healthy balance. So the chemical treatments are very harmful to the ecosystem, and we don't use chemicals.
Thank you for correcting me on that.
That's something that I thought I would just correct you on there, Mike.
No, you have to, because this is the information that we want to give everyone. And let's be clear on it, that we are helping the environment and not hurting the environment.
Yeah.
Nick, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you again next year. If I have any more questions from anyone else there, I'm going to bring you back on. Okay?
Yeah, send them my way or bring me on. I appreciate it. And take care and enjoy the rest of your day.
Keep making it right, buddy.
Take care, man.
This episode is brought to you by Improve Canada, Canada's largest home improvement center. Check out improvecanada.com. If you like the show, check out the episode page on makeitright.ca for more tips.